a second time, and I call the honourable member for Hinkler.
Well, thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. And firstly, can I just say that I've got great disappointment in the loss of the Labor Party's bipartisan support on this very, very important program, one which is clearly difficult to implement. It is a tough policy. I've admitted that publicly many, many times. I've also said on many occasions it is not a magic bullet, but it is a tool that we have in the toolbox. It is a policy which we can implement, and one which will make a great difference. And can I say to the member for Barton that in terms of the Senate inquiry, you did miss one of the critical recommendations, and that is the overall recommendation that the legislation should be supported. That was the outcome from the Senate inquiry. So it's not a blanket approach, and I'm going to talk specifically about my electorate, Mr Deputy Speaker. In the electorate of Hinkler, it is not just the city of Bundaberg, it is the city of Bundaberg and Hervey Bay, it is the outlying areas such as Bargara and Childers and Woodgate and Booyal, and all of those smaller communities such as Toogoom and Burrum Heads. It does cover a very, very broad range. The consultation has been extensive, and I'll talk about that in detail as we continue. It has extensive community support, and I'll talk about exactly how we managed to ascertain that early on before we work forward with the Department of Social Services. In terms of ways off the card, well, if you're on New Start, there is a very clear one. You can go to work. So if you are employed, clearly you will not be on the card. You do not need New Start. It is targeted specifically at those in my electorate who are aged 35 or under, and on particular payments, which we'll discuss a little bit later on. So I'd say to those people in the Bundaberg area, we are continuing with the rollout. I'm disappointed that Labor is not supporting the recommendations for something which quite clearly works. Now, in terms of our community, Mr Deputy Speaker, I can only tell you that I was born there. It's part of my community. My family is there. I grew up there. My kids go to school there. I've had businesses there. I know extensively the difficulties we have, and I've got to tell you that they've gotten worse. They've not gotten better. They have gotten worse. We need to do something which will make some changes, and the amendments proposed and the legislation proposed for the Social Services Legislation Amendment, Cashless Debit Card Bill for 2017 will do that. But you don't have to believe me, Mr Deputy Speaker, as I'm sure the Labor Party won't. I can show you some absolute demonstrations from my local community, including the local press. And the first one is this, Fraser Coast Chronicle by Blake Antrobus. This was last year. $5 million a month on pokies just in the Fraser Coast lost. That is without Bundaberg. Almost another $5 million. So some $10 million every single month for 12 months.
Order. I remind the member not to use props in the House.
Well, of course, I withdraw, Mr Deputy Speaker. I'll use it for reference only. So this is just one front page. $10 million in pokies lost. $10 million. The second one in the Bundaberg Newsmail. Ice, rife in Bundaberg homes. Bundaberg the worst for parental drug abuse. $30,000 inheritance, blown on drugs. And on the other side of the coin, Mr Deputy Speaker, another front page with a gentleman who is looking for 30 people to come and work at his scallop shucking business, positions he just can't fill. So we have challenges on both sides of the coin. We have employment available that people simply won't do, and we have real challenges around drugs and alcohol. And this is one way forward. This is one way forward. It is a policy which is on the table. It's been demonstrated to work. Now, I can go on and on and on here, Mr Deputy Speaker. We have dozens and dozens. In fact, there were so many in the local newspapers that my staff couldn't give them all to me. There were literally dozens over a very short period of time. Thief takes off with auntie's ashes. Mother's horror as husband slain in home. We need to do something about this. We need to do something about this. Now, I've said publicly, and I'll say it again, it is not a magic bullet. There is no way that we can address every single issue simply with this change in policy, but it will make a difference because it has been shown to make a difference in the 2 trial sites. Now, it quarantines 80% of a person's welfare payment onto the card, and as we've said, the remaining 20% is available for cash. It is a debit card like every other debit card. Now, I noticed that the member for Grey, Rowan Ramsey, spoke about the challenges when the power goes out. Well, I've got to tell you, that's the same challenge for every other card. So regardless of which card you have in your wallet, if the machine won't work, none of them will work. This is quite simply something which people use regularly. In fact, if you're under the age of 35, I'd suggest nearly everything goes onto your debit card. Very, very few of them carry cash. Now, the Minister for Human Services at the time, Alan Tudge, announced Hinkler as the next trial site on September 21. It was announced in the budget for those 2 new locations, and the proposal for my electorate is different. After community consultation, extensive community consultation, what's been determined is quite simply that if you are 35 years or under, You're on a payment which is a New Start, Youth Allowance Job Seeker, Parenting Payment Single or Parenting Payment Partnered. You'll be included in this rollout. Now that is substantial. In the Hinkler electorate, that is 6,711 individuals at the time that we put the data together. Now I recognise that is a lot, but we do need to do something about this, because here are the numbers, Mr Deputy Speaker. It's very straightforward. In my electorate, of those people who are under 30 on welfare today, 90% had a parent who was also on welfare during the past 15 years, the majority of whom were on welfare for at least 9 of those 15 years. And the second one, and this is the most disturbing, Mr Deputy Speaker, without intervention, it is projected that 57% of those under 30 on welfare will still be on income support in 10 years' time. We are failing a generation of children. We are failing them. And quite simply, this is something we can address. We can do it with the cashless card, along with a lot of other measures. Now, I've spoken about what we need to do for unemployment, how we drive infrastructure, how we continue to drive the economy. And along with the investment, there will be an additional $1 million for community services. Now, that's on top of the already 70 federally funded services across the region, which includes drug and alcohol services, financial capability, employment and families and children's programs. Now, earlier this year, a further $500,000 was dedicated towards drug and alcohol programs. Surely we need to start to address the cause. We need to start to address the cause. So we've got very bad statistics. We've got a very low demographic. In fact, the Local Government Association of Australia just put out their State of the Regions report. The area of Wide Bay, the statistical region, which includes my electorate and of course part of Wide Bay, Mr O'Brien's, it indicated that this region has the lowest per capita income of anywhere in the country at some $34,000, as it has had for some 20 years. So we need to address that. We need to ensure there are jobs, but we also need to ensure that people are actually using their money on the requirements for life. I don't think that any taxpayer would be offended that you are restricted from not purchasing alcohol in terms of takeaway alcohol, from not using the money provided by the taxpayer for the purchase of illicit substances, or to pour down the throat of a pokie machine to the tune of $10 million a month in the region. Now, I don't think that is unreasonable in any circumstance. Now, in terms of the community consultation, Mr Deputy Speaker, my office originally did some mail-outs. Up until the announcement, there were 32,000 constituents that we contacted to get an indication from them as to their views. Now, that's a substantial amount of an electorate of just over 100,000 voters. 32,000 in the form of a direct mail-out. We phone polled about 500 people. We sent an additional 5,500 direct emails, and we had many calls both in and out of my office. To date, the feedback we've received shows 75% in favour of the cashless debit card being introduced, 23% against and 2% undecided. Now, that is just the initial consultation to determine whether there was support in the community for us to look at this very, very difficult, and it is a difficult policy, Mr Deputy Speaker, in terms of the rollout of the cashless card. Now, Mr Tudge put a letter to the editor in the Newsmail, the local paper, on the 12th of October 2017, in terms of the consultation that was conducted on top of that by the Department of Social Services. And they are very professional people. Right? This is the public service. It's what they do. They've already been involved in the trial rollouts in other areas. They understand where the difficulties are. Most of those, in fact all of those, have been addressed. We conducted 182 consultations across Hinkler. Now, that is not 182 individuals. That is 182 meetings with groups, with some individuals who, of course, have difficulty working in a group, across the board with those frontline service providers. And importantly, 55 of those consultations were local service providers, those on the front line with disadvantaged families. We consulted with over 70 community members through direct correspondence or meetings. We held 2 broad community information sessions, another 26 consultations with local church groups, 25 with local government and 3 meetings with the state government. We also consulted with the relevant peak bodies. Now, that was just at that date in October. They continue to work, they continue to push forward, talking to people who are affected and ensuring that this will be functional. It will roll out correctly with as little difficulty as absolutely possible, because this is about one thing. It is about ensuring better outcomes for our community, and in particular, not just the individuals, but the children who are affected. Because one thing I have to say, Mr Deputy Speaker, what shocked me was what's come out of this community consultation. The fact was, in my view, I thought, OK, Perhaps it'll be an age demographic, those on New Start. But what came back, particularly from those frontline service providers, is we must include parenting payment because the people who are being affected the most are children. Now, we've had the local Labor state member, the former Labor state member, come out and absolutely decry that, right? We don't have a problem. You know, schools run breakfast clubs. In fact, they run so many breakfast clubs, the state Labor government had to put another $2 million into it. More money for these difficult issues. Now, if we want to talk about those people in the community who don't have a dog in this fight, Mr Deputy Speaker, and let's call it what it is, right? This is a difficult challenge for the idealists. Right? This is about a practical outcome. And one of those is a gentleman called Brian Cordes. Now, Mr Cordes is the former federal member for Hinkler, the former Labor member for Hinkler, a very well-known former member of the Labor Party, and he is 100% supportive. And if I ask the rhetorical question, Mr Deputy Speaker, why is he so supportive? Because he knows what is happening to our kids in our community. And I can tell you that he is so supportive. He has written letters, he has spoken publicly, he's done media, he's been on TV and radio and all of those things because he is concerned about his community and exactly what is going on, and he thinks this will help, and I agree with him. I agree with him. Now, I'm just a local member. I've worked there, I've lived there, but I don't deal on a day-to-day basis like our frontline community services. I'll be taking their advice, and their advice is that this will make a real difference. This will make a real difference. Now, I know that the member for Grey spoke about the Orima report, and I'm not going to buy into too much of that. I'll leave that as stated. But what we do know is that we have support from those people who are not idealists. Now, I spoke about the gambling issue previously and the amount of money that's been spent, and I would like to make special mention of the Deputy Mayor, George Seymour, in Hervey Bay. Now, I know George. I get on with George quite well. He is an intelligent, passionate man who's concerned about his community. But on one hand, he's complaining about the amount of money we are pouring down the gullet of poker machines, and on the other hand, he is not supportive of the cashless debit card. Now, this is one way to make a real difference. Now, if we are not here to do that, Mr Deputy Speaker, what is our role? Because we are local members, first and foremost, to represent our community and their interests and the difficulties that they continue to have. And my community, I have to say, needs the support. So I would say to the Labor Party, you don't need to believe me. You can believe our local newspapers. You can believe the former federal Labor member for Hinkler, Brian Cordes. You can believe all of those people in the community who are willing to put their name on a piece of paper, to stand up, to be involved, to be in the community reference group, to do media. And they have been absolutely pilloried. Those people on social media who have been basically giving them a very hard time. All of the threats, and I know every member of parliament gets threats. Right? We all do. That is just part of the territory. But these are people who have basically been out serving our community for years. And they are telling me, and they are telling the department, and they are telling the minister that this is a way that we can address a real challenge in our community. So I would say to the Labor Party once again, please reconsider. Please reconsider. Because it is not your community which is being affected. It is ours, and they are supportive. They are absolutely supportive. Now, I agree there are people out there who are idealistically opposed, Mr Deputy Speaker, and that is their right. This is a democratic country. They are entitled to protest. They are entitled to start their protest groups. But the overwhelming majority of the support in the community is for the cashless card, more than 70%. In fact, I've never seen a policy of government on either side supported as strongly as this. It has been quite incredible. I get stopped on the street. I get pulled up by people to say, please do not give up on this. It is something that we need to do. And I see them out there every single day. We take phone calls into my office constantly saying we've got to do this. It is necessary. So once again, can I just implore those opposite, please reconsider. We've spoken about the Senate inquiry. Their results were clear. They support the rollout of the cashless card in the additional areas. It is funded, it is in the budget, it is ready to go. There is an opportunity here to make a difference in a community which needs the help. We have an unemployment rate of around 9%. We have a youth unemployment rate of around 23%. And in fact, the adjusted unemployment rate, the one used by the Local Government Association, if you remove those on a disability pension, for example, is over 16%, the worst in the country. So I say to all of those who may be listening to this broadcast, and with absolute humility, we do need the help. This is one way that we can do it. I once again implore those opposite, please support this legislation. I know there are those in your group which are idealistically opposed, and they are entitled to that view. But listen to my communities, the people of Bundaberg, the people of Hervey Bay, the people of Hinkler, and please, I support this bill wholeheartedly, and we need to have it passed. Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker.